But she's gripping on to the ledge for dear life, like literally as if she's about to drown. And I came out of the gym, I got my music on, I got my headphones in, I'm singing along, and I see her, babe, I fucking drop everything. And I was like, Mummy's coming, baby, Mummy's coming. And I go and I pick her up and I'm like, are you okay? She wasn't freaking drowning.
Right. She had her feet on the ground.
She had her feet on the ground.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Relationship Theory. I'm Tom Bilyeu and I am joined by my lovely and beautiful wife, Lisa Bilyeu. And today we are going to be talking about whether men actually want independent women. Let's light some people on fire. Let's go.
Dun, dun,
All right.
dun.
We have a
All
question.
Right, question. I'm a working professional and a single mum. I'm naturally independent and self-reliant. It is my true nature to be that way. I have a very playful, happy personality which attracts guys. But as soon as the guy notices my self-reliance, he gets uninterested. My ex recently said that he doesn't see me in a relationship because men naturally want to be with women who need them. How much truth do you think there is in this statement?
You know, it's really interesting. So, as often is the case, I will caveat by saying, I don't know her, so I don't know if she's accurately representing the situation or not. But as we discovered, or I should say, as I discovered very early on in our relationship, where I thought the only thing you would find attractive was me being better than you at everything. And then finally had my Daryl moment, which is a movie from the 80s, if people haven't seen it, where this kid's an android and he's being raised by his parents, and the mother's having a really hard time because the kid is perfect in every way. He literally doesn't need a parent. And it really stuck with me. I was probably like, I don't know, 9 or 10 when I saw it. And the dad pulls the kid aside and says, look, your mother needs to be needed. And like it clicked for Daryl. And so he started messing things up, and then the mom felt needed. And I want to separate two issues. I love that you're independent. I love that because I'm not responsible for your every moment. You have your own hopes, dreams, desires, friends, hobbies, everything, which gives me some time to spend selfishly the way that I want to spend it. And so we come together truly as peers and equals. And but going back to that moment where I had the realization that who on earth would want to be in a partnership where the other person is better than them at everything? Like that would really be quite miserable. And to come together as peers, for you to be better than me at some things, and for that to be mutually acknowledged, for you to know you're better at it, for me to know you're better at it, and for us to say, here are the things that you're better at. And the converse, for you to know that I'm better at things, for me to know that I'm better at things, and for you to say, these are the things that you're better at. And to have moments where you know that I need you, and to have moments where I know that you need me, it feels awesome. And if somebody feels the need to be so independent that they can't be open to like, hey, you carry me for a minute, it's a really beautiful thing that takes a lot of security to finally get to the point where you can be like, no, actually, you're really good at this and I'm terrible. And I love that this is a moment for you to shine and for you to be strong and all of that. And then I love the moments where I get to be strong and carry you. And I'm using probably really masculine language for that because it's going to be like slightly different. Like maybe I need support or nurturing, or maybe sometimes it really is strength. But like learning that dance, I think is really important. And for any guys listening to this, if they need to hear it from like an ultra masculine perspective, Jocko Willink talks about in the military, you better be able to lead and follow. And if you can't follow, if your ego is such that you always have to be the leader, you're going to get shot in the face. And recognizing it's just smart to be so emotionally secure that you can be nimble and say it doesn't detract from my value for you to be in a leadership position. And I'm very capable of also stepping into that.
God, I literally think you hit the nail on the head in that last line. It's like, what was the words you just said, the sentence?
Like at the very end,
yeah.
For me to be able to follow.
It was, yeah, the insecurity. So the fact that like you have to be okay with following and leading. And when it comes to needs, And this ex-boyfriend, I think it's very clear of how he felt, where his identity maybe was in, I'm going to take care of you. And now if that person doesn't need taken care of, what does that mean for them? And clearly he's not secure in that. In fact, that was it. Be secure in yourself. And I think that that's where it comes from. If you think that you can only bring one value to a relationship, I have to provide for them, let's say in a very traditional, you know, male-female relationship. The man wants to provide. Okay, but what if she doesn't need providing? Is that the only thing that they value themselves for? So if you take that away, now they're like, oh, well, I have nothing to bring to this relationship. It makes me feel bad, so goodbye. I think that that is very clear on the fact that it is the type of selection she is making if she is finding guys that when she turns up confident, that doesn't go, fuck, that's awesome. That they go.
So you think this is a him problem?
I do. And
even though she, from this perspective, all we know, because this guy may have had many other successful relationships, but we know that she has had problem after problem after problem, and it's been the same problem.
So so you're right. That, what I just said, is a him problem, 100%. But her problem is she so valuing her independence that she's not allowing someone to come into her space and to be vulnerable and to show that she needs something. I think everyone needs something, everyone. So now it's a question is, are you strong, that you're just, or you're too strong, or you're too prideful, and it's like, I'm strong, I can handle myself, I don't need anything from anyone. Now, if that's how she's approaching the relationship, I actually get why the guy's like, well, fuck, well, what's the point in being in this relationship? I want to feel needed. I think everyone does. I love it when you need me. So is that what she's doing? Where she's now putting her guard up, they come in, they're now saying, well, she doesn't need me, what am I bringing to this relationship, so I can't be it. So I do think it's 100% both ways. In the first example, I think that's a him thing, but it also is, how is she approaching it? Because it's totally true. Like me and you, there are times where I'm like, okay, I could handle this by myself, but I know that, like, I actually like turning to you. I like turning to you, like, babe, kill the spider. Like, that actually makes me feel a certain way. Because, yeah, I mean, just going back to, people want to feel good, people want to feel like they're bringing value to a relationship. And if you come to the relationship going, oh no, I'm good, I've got my shit together, I actually don't need you, but hey, you're here. It's like, well, you know, so that becomes a little tricky. And then the last thing I'll say, though, is on the flip side of not being too needy to the person, and making sure that you're not just turning them to them to make you feel a certain way, to make you feel good about yourself, that you are able to stand strong and be independent. And the thing for me, the one story that, you know, really struck me was, I'd always turn to you, I'm 5'1" and you're 6 foot, and I love how big you are, and you wrap your arms around me, and I feel protected by you. And I love that. Like, I actually love that feeling, even though I think of myself as a very independent, strong woman. And there was one time that my gut really freaking caused problems, and I was in the middle of a photo shoot. I ran to our bathroom and I fell on my knees, and I grabbed my phone. I was like, I need my husband.
I really hate this fucking story.
I know you do. Yeah. But it's actually important to say. Like, it was such a, and in fact, I want to ask you why you hate it, but let me continue. So I'm on my knees in agony, can barely breathe because my gut was so painful, and I'm calling you. And I'm like, I need him. And we have a rule of the 3-phone rule. If you call 3 times, it means no matter what you're doing, even if you're with the president, you freaking walk out the room, you call your wife back. And so I call you 3 times and you still don't answer. And I know that you're in the house, so I'm just like, he's obviously got his phone off. And I'm on the floor holding my side, and I'm like, I need him. And I was like, shit, I don't need him. I want him, but I don't need him. Get the fuck up, Lisa. And I got up. And that lesson taught me so much about myself that I love the story. But you clearly hate it.
I love what you took away from it, and that's so powerful and so you, and is a huge reason why our relationship is so healthy. But obviously in that moment, I didn't know my phone was ringing. And the thought that you could be lying somewhere struggling like that, and I'm oblivious, I have no idea. It's like in those movies, you know, somebody's dying and they're calling the person and the person's distracted. I just really, really hate that. I hate to think that something as innocuous as like just not realizing my phone was ringing is the difference between I mean, not to like derail, but you know, like people end up choking to death when they're by themselves, but they're saved if they're with somebody. And just the thought that something that sort of excruciating, I was so close to you and just didn't know.
And isn't it, I mean, this is a great example then of how it makes you feel to be needed.
Not sure what you mean by that, because in this instance, being needed and failing to show up because I didn't know leaves me with like, every time you bring this story up, I relive this like, God, I cannot believe I didn't realize. Because being needed is so powerful. And when you're with somebody who is so strong and confident and all that, the few times you get to like really be a hero and to be useful, you want to make sure that you're there for that. And like the time where Bonsai was eating the mouse, and I got to dun da da da, you know, and come, and that's a whole another story for people to really hear. But you know, in those moments, you feel great that you can deliver on that promise. And so to find out after the fact that you went through all of that, and I just didn't know it was happening.
Yeah, God, there's one little side note that I hope it's not too off topic, but kind of going back to like, I'm actually leaning more into maybe it's her, maybe she really is just like not allowing a guy to come in and to feel needed. And the more I think about it, the more I think of how important it is. Like 2 weeks or less than 2 weeks ago, Wookie fell into our little pool and it's so shallow that literally her feet are touching the floor, but she's gripping on to the ledge for dear life, like literally as if she's about to drown. And I came out of the gym, I got my music on, I got my headphones in, I'm singing along, and I see her, babe, I fucking drop everything. And I was like, Mummy's coming, baby, Mummy's coming. And I go and I pick her up and I'm like, are you okay? She wasn't freaking drowning.
Right. She had her feet on the ground.
She had her feet on the ground. I felt so good about myself. Like for a few hours after, I was...
Felt like you rescued her.
I did, and I was going up and I was like, did Mummy save you? But it goes to show that, like, the almost just echoing of why being needed in a relationship is beautiful.
Now, you ready for something really weird?
Yeah.
Oh God, I found this so interesting.
Fluff on your cheek. There you go.
Ah, good catch. Wow, that was there for the whole beginning. I found this really, really interesting article about why in a romantic relationship you end up calling each other baby. Because isn't that kind of weird?
Is this going to freak me out now? It's going to be like
I don't
weird.
think so.
Like...
I found it, it's along these lines.
Go ahead.
So when you're an integrated person, right? So Jung talks about you need to be able to integrate the shadow side of yourself.
Who does?
Carl Jung. And when you are unable to be honest about the fact that you have a dark side or a shadow side, then it will manifest in really weird ways. So the same is true that inside all of us is a child, is somebody that wants to be held when they're scared, that wants to be vulnerable, at times and to receive that reassurance. And when you had a childhood where you received that you would express fear, uncertainty, whatever, and you would be comforted, that you're able to integrate that child. And so as you get older, you can sort of migrate in and out of these moments of vulnerability and to sort of step into that thing that still lives inside of you, which we'll call the inner child. And when you're in a romantic relationship where this is truly integrated and you feel that you can actually let your guard down and that you can allow yourself to at times be vulnerable, there's pathology on both sides. I've become really obsessed with this idea. So you can be too needy and you can be too tough, right? So this idea that when you have integrated that inner child and the relationship feels safe, that you can lower that guard. And so over time, as you really begin to connect and integrate with each other, you get to the point where you express that thing where you can each let that side of you out. And what's interesting about it is how like sort of nurturing it is. Now, because like, for instance, God, this is where if you've got kids, you probably get them out of the room. But I would never say baby to you in like an aggressive way. You know what I mean? Like a sexually aggressive way. It would never cross my mind. But in a tender moment, yes. And so it's really fascinating. Now, it gets into like other phrases like daddy, which has all kinds of weird connotations and meanings. And so as I was reading this article, I was like, oh my God, are these two things tied? So that's utterly fascinating. But anyway, that whole idea of the integration and that it is so universal. If I remember right from the article, they're saying basically across every culture, there is this idea of an infantile word finds its way into really like connected relationships where vulnerability is something that you can go in and out of.
Whoa.
Yeah, I was like, wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah, because we call each other baby all the time.
100%. Never even thought about it because it's such a thing, right? Like my parents called each other baby. It's like, it's just in the cultural subconscious that that's a thing.
It's interesting because if I was mad at you, I may say babe, but I would never say baby.
Right.
But babe.
Right. Yeah, true.
But I'd never go baby.
That also, that gets into another interesting thing of like, does it normalize over time? And like in the beginning, would you have done that? Maybe not. I don't know. I don't know enough about the underlying psychology, but when I read that, I was like, oh my God, this is so interesting. Very interesting.
Wow.
All right, so the last thing I'll say on all of that is in any relationship, I would highly encourage people, if there is a pattern in your relationships across different people, you are the consistent element. And there's only two fingers, right, that should ever be pointed, and that's your thumbs back at you. Like, what am I doing in this scenario that I could change? And that doesn't mean that there isn't dysfunction in your partner as well. Just saying you can't control that. And so retaining your power, remembering that if you look at what you're doing, then you can find a way out of this. So it's really interesting that this idea of like remove, like when you have a default base assumption, right? Like her base assumption, you know my obsession with the idea of base assumptions. Her base assumption is, oh, guys don't want an independent woman. Okay, cool, maybe. That may actually be true. But for a second, review the problem and remove that as an option. So now we're gonna set your dominant base assumption aside and say, what could this be if it couldn't be that? What else might it be? And see if you stumble upon something that's just as plausible. And that like opens people's minds, and whatever you're facing, whenever it seems like, oh, it's always this way, right? If you remove that and explore other possibilities, and I think we're living through sort of a really worrying time culturally where people have like these default answers. You know, like, you know my feelings about patriarchy. It's like, it's a default answer. Maybe, but like, take that off the table for a second and see if there's anything else. Because it is an expansive way to think. And as you open your mind and begin looking at other things, like the world just stops collapsing in on itself.
Plus there's social proof, right? If that's really a belief that you have that men don't actually want independent women, look around and say, is that universally true? Well, the great news is, one right here, it's not true. So this is an example that there is potential of a relationship being had between a man and a woman where a man does love a woman being independent. So now go back to what you said, what are the things that I'm doing wrong in my own way of interacting with my partner? And then also to the selection. Who am I selecting that they don't like the fact that I'm independent? And putting those two things together, I think could really result in a relationship that she's really looking for, where she can be herself and be independent, but yet still have someone that loves her for her.
Word. All right, everybody, there it is. Like anything, it is a mixed bag, and I'm sure there are some guys who don't want an independent woman, but do I think that that's universally true? No, I don't. I think people want to step into a relationship as peers. I think that the ability to have the interchange of roles, sometimes leading, sometimes following, is the healthiest way. To be able to be vulnerable in a relationship is incredibly powerful. And whenever you're assessing a situation, ask, what could you do differently to get a different result? And with that, I will bid you all adieu. And from both of us, until next time, my friends, build an amazing relationship. Take care.